You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio, man. We are here once again today, man. We have another guest lined up for y'all. We have a music artist, but she also does a little bit of marketing as well. She's an entrepreneur. She is Courtney McKenna, and man, she has some music that has been out, man. She's been like grinding, but man, she was born in Orange County, but she was raised in Arizona, and she also went to school, college, all that jazz. She went to New York for a hot minute, came back to the West Coast, settled in LA in 2019. And I'm not going to give your whole story away. First, welcome to the show, Courtney. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Doing well. How are you?
All's well, man. And I gave like a super teaser. So for the audience, kind of tell us a little bit about Orange County, if you remember anything, and then kind of tell us about your childhood growing up in Arizona.
Sure. Let's see. I mean, Orange County, from when I was younger, I really don't have too many memories, but, my dad was actually in California after my parents divorced and my mom moved out to Arizona. So we were back here quite a bit. And, it's a nice part of the state. I think there's a lot of beautiful beaches down there. I remember really fancy shopping malls and car dealerships.
Nice.
So, lots of good restaurants. My grandpa actually used to have a house right in Newport Beach, which was pretty fancy. And I don't have any specific memories from that, but I've heard stories, and definitely privileged to be by the beach. I think is in California anywhere is pretty beautiful. So I'm grateful for that.
So when you were going to school, were you into the arts? Were you into anything music wise, or was this something that came later?
Yeah. I've definitely always been into music. I immediately got thrown into singing in church when I was like a toddler.
Dang, they threw you in there.
Yeah. But, I liked it. I sang through, in church choirs through high school. And then, in high school, I joined, school choir. So I did quite a bit of singing always. And, I was in band in middle school, high school. I played clarinet, and then I tried to learn guitar, but it was too hard at the time. So I remember being like middle school age and really loving music so much that I would look up the lyrics and sort of obsess over them. And then in high school, I think I even used different lyrics from different songs that I really loved to explain different characters and book studies and that sort of thing. So yeah, I've always loved writing. And I think songwriting in particular has been a really unique outlet for me to express myself and different feelings that I had about growing up, in a divorced family. And there were some really good things and some really bad things. And so it helped to have that outlet for myself when it felt like there wasn't anybody else to talk to.
Now, you mentioned that guitar was hard for you to play, but in your bio it says that you were self-taught. Who inspired you to play that instrument? Or did you just like the way it sounded? Were you a fan of like just listening to instrumentals or something like that?
Yeah, I loved the way it sounded. I just also really loved that I could accompany myself with it because, I love to sing. So I think when I got out of college and I moved to New York, that's when I really was able to start practicing guitar because I didn't have any distractions anymore. Like in high school, I was super focused on just trying to get the best grades that I could and be in as many clubs as I could, because I thought that that's what I needed to do to get into a good college. And, it all worked out. But after college, since that was my biggest goal at the time, I was like, well, now what?
Right.
And I didn't know that music school was a thing, otherwise I think maybe I would have considered that. But I studied marketing at the University of Arizona. And
you double majored too. I saw that.
Yeah, it was, so my degree was called retailing and consumer science. And then I double majored in marketing and business administration. And it was the same prerequisites as the business school, but a little bit more of a focus on like psychology and buying, because at the time I thought I wanted to work in fashion. And then I got to New York and started at a fashion internship and quickly realized that's not what I wanted to be doing. And that's when I really started teaching myself guitar, mostly because I just wanted to be able to sing. And I felt like it was a way that I could perform without having to really rely on anybody else. And when I bought my first guitar, it came everywhere with me. So, that was a big bonus. I think piano might have been an easier instrument to learn, but you can't really bring that with you. So
yeah, you need like a MIDI controller or something. But by the way, listen, on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest Courtney McKenna. When you were out in New York, did you know anyone out there before you went? Was it like, I'm just going for it, I'm going to the East Coast and see what happens?
Pretty much. I mean, I had a second cousin who lived in New Jersey. So I got connected to them and they let me stay with them for a few months before I moved to Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And we traded my time. I babysat their kids in exchange for rent, which was really helpful. They introduced me to a few people, and I met some musicians through Craigslist, and I found my living apartment through Craigslist at the time. And
so that was a lifesaver for you.
Yeah. I think I was used to starting over because every summer growing up, my sister and I would go and stay with my dad, and he would move around a lot. So we never really had friends to catch up with. It was kind of like every summer we were starting over. So when I got to New York, I was like,
it wasn't hard for you to meet people.
It was still hard because it was like I had to pay my rent, Yeah. But it was, definitely. It helped working. And I worked in some restaurants and met a lot of people that way. And then just through different jobs, started making some friends and started finding other gigs. And the apartment that I ended up living in for like 5 years out there was sort of a music hub. We had a practice space in our basement, and one of my roommates had like thousands of records. Like it took up an entire wall of our apartment. So I really got like a whole new experience, just, meeting people who were doing it, like making music. And the New York sound is a completely different vibe than the West Coast. So I was introduced to like a lot of different types of bands and music, and I really loved it out there.
What were you listening to though, as far as like everyone has their favorite song, favorite artist, band, what have you? What was on your playlist just in general?
When I lived in New York, I guess I was really excited about ESG. They're a band of three sisters from the 70s who lived in the Bronx. And anything that was sort of more like new wave, post-punk. I feel like that all of that music was really brand new to me at the time. So that was really cool. I also remember like discovering Ethiopian jazz for the first time, and like,
Oh, wow.
I couldn't get enough of it. Still so good. But yeah, those two things. And then just I worked alongside the art world for a good chunk of my time there. And so there was a lot of underground house music happening in that scene. So those were sort of the three main vibes, I guess.
Mm.
Jazz, post-punk, and underground house music. Yeah.
Man, that's a cool little variety right there.
Yeah.
In 2017, you were able to start your first U.S. tour on the West Coast. But
Yeah.
before that, how did you meet your band members? Did you have a band? And was that in New York? How did that take place?
Yeah, I had a few different bands in New York, actually. The first band I had was just a drum and bass duo. And I played guitar. And it's funny because, I mean, I'm a much better guitar player now, but now looking back on it, it's funny to me that I didn't think I needed a lead guitarist. Like, I don't know. We were just rocking out, and I don't think I took it very seriously. Like, I was, trying to get it together, but I also had no idea what I was doing. So at one point we started recording, and I just realized that they were really cool to want to support me, but I wasn't really sure that we were on the same page as far as like our lifestyles. I think that's a really big thing that I've learned, is that if you're going to be making music with somebody, like, got to have some similar values. And big part of my story is alcohol. And so, especially that my drummer at the time, he really liked to party, and I was kind of moving away from that. So it wasn't the best fit. But then I had a duo project with my roommate, and we were called Always Hard. We were like a post pop punk duo, which was really fun. And at the same time, I was working on more of my like acoustic solo stuff. So, I had a lot of time to, I don't know, not a lot of time, I guess I should say, to sort of make music, because I was also getting more into marketing at that point in my life, and trying to increase my income so that I could like
use on the grind.
Yeah. So we ended things as far as the duo goes, and I went on tour. It's my solo thing. That's the story in a nutshell, basically. But
now, when you went on tour, though, like, was this in New York or was this the West Coast?
Oh, yeah, that was the West Coast.
How was that transition, though? Like, were you prepping, like taking time to prep to plan for that? Or did you just kind of, hey, I'm going to wing this, I'm going out to the West Coast, change to...
Yeah, it was totally, I mean, I'm really glad that I did it, because it was a great experience. And, being from the West Coast, I think it was pretty easy for me to navigate. And, I had some friends I could stay with and family and stuff. So that really helped. But I had a buddy of mine help me to line up the shows. And then it was kind of like, all right, let's go. Like I really also did not know what I was doing. And I think I had only really performed, with people at the time. I had a few solo shows, but it's definitely eye-opening to get up there and just go for it. Because after that, I realized, okay, I need to put together an actual band. But I did do that when I got back to New York, and had like a really nice group right before I left. But the West Coast was calling in 2019. So
Los Angeles, we all hear about it. We see it in movies, What was the energy like for you being in Los Angeles? Was it magical, or did it have to warm up before that point?
Honestly, it's been pretty magical since I moved here. I think before I left New York, I was doing a ton of visualizing and like praying, because I knew that I needed to move and I knew that I wanted something different. And I really wanted a place that was just a healthier environment for me. And I actually came to LA in the middle of a tour. I did a little show in Hollywood, and then I was on to Hawaii to check out. Yeah,
I pump the brakes on that, man. Spill the beans. What was the whole Hawaii thing about?
Yeah, I was actually planning a women's wellness retreat out there with a girl that I knew from college and one of her friends. So we were in Hawaii, and the girl that I had just met, my friend's friend, was like, I think you're really more of a West Coast girl. And I just remember hearing like, yeah, okay. Like, I know. But by the end of that trip, I had decided to move to California. And it actually turned out that she was looking to move up to LA. She lived in Orange County at the time. And we ended up being roommates for a year and a half. So that made the transition really easy, because I think I had been thinking about it for a while, but I didn't want to just move and figure things out. I wanted to have a little bit of a plan, because, a lot of my life has been just winging it. And I usually
pretty good job.
Yeah. I have to say, like, I'm grateful for landing on my feet, but I also have started to recognize that, with a little more planning, things can just be a little bit more graceful.
I mean, that's interesting because, by the way, listen, I'm Refocus Radio taking our guest, Courtney McKenna. I mean, the way I hear you tell like your story is you learn to be in pocket. And music, you hear about that because, like in jazz, there's like call and response, right? Things just kind of fit and flow. It has a flow to it. So you just have a flow to you, you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to be here. Okay, well, I'm going to just do this. Was that something you learned from your mom or your dad, or was it just the people you kept in your circle? How did you keep that mindset where it's like, okay, yeah, if I have to do this, boom, I'm going to make it work?
It's a really great question. I think it's probably, I feel like I've always tried to listen to my intuition, and whether that's like guided by what I'm hearing in the outside world, or sometimes just ideas of inspiration pop up, just trusting like how it feels in my body. If it makes me feel excited, then sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that's like a beware kind of thing. But I do think, my dad was a professional football player, and I remember he would just go with massive amounts of, energy to make things happen. And I feel like I do remember seeing that as like an example when I was younger, but the more that I learn, it's like I had to suffer through burnout a lot of times in my life, in my 20s especially. So I think I've been searching for balance for a really long time. And one of the best things that I heard about balance is that balance isn't really something that exists. It's more of like the integration of whatever it is that you think you need balance for. So, for me, it's like I'm doing marketing, I'm doing music, but this past year, I also learned more deeply how to give myself moments of rest and to give myself time to actually create more meaningful relationships. Whereas before, like I used to be so focused on just diving into whatever it was that I was working on and just letting it, fully consume me, which wasn't always a bad thing, but sometimes it did put me over the edge.
When you are discovering that, I mean, I feel like you have discovered it in small amounts along the journey, because that's kind of how you get fans anyway, being yourself. It's hard to get a fan if you're not yourself, because they can see it. They can see when you're not genuine about it.
Yeah.
So when you take your life and you record these songs, are you trying to illustrate, your experiences through these songs? Or are you just really just about trying to entertain, the listeners and do something catchy? What kind of art are you trying to do through your sound?
I definitely want, in an ideal world, I'm creating music that can heal and transform people. I want to see people thriving, and I think that music is just a powerful tool to help people. But when I'm writing, I think it's a mix of things. Sometimes I feel like I'm writing a country song and it just comes out and it's like super silly and goofy and catchy, and sometimes I am writing something that's super heavy and emotional, and it's a direct reflection of what I'm feeling in that moment. That's usually more so what I write, but I've been also just trying to find inspiration in different places. I'm actually in this 3-month program right now where I'm writing a full record. So there's definitely been a lot of reflection on that. And, I think that there's part of the message that I want to tell from my own story. And then there's also just inspirational truths that I've learned. And I feel like a lot of times it's easy for me to write a song that's emotionally charged, but then I have to go back and it's like, okay, that is my true experience, but how can I reframe it in a more positive light, so that way when people hear it, it's something new, because for me it's new, because for me it's a new way of loving someone or of stepping out into the world. I think that we have to challenge ourselves to be better, and it's really easy to just write the same song over and over again if I let myself.
Once again, this is R&B Focus Radio, talking to our guest, Courtney McKenna. And do you do voiceovers?
I have in the
hear
past.
it. I tell you, I can hear it. I can hear it. It's like this whole show sounds like a voiceover.
Yeah, totally. I love anything with the voice. I think it's a really powerful tool that we've kind of underestimated ourselves, as a human race.
But with all jokes aside to that, you have a instrument, your voice, that you get to use. And I like how you were talking about earlier that you want to have it inspire people. And when you had your dark times in, life, music, job, what have you, what are some of the things that you try to do to get yourself out of that dark space?
It's a great question too. I think that one of the best things is just going for a walk, leaving your phone at home if you can. But sometimes I would go for a run or something and want to listen to music. And I think working out in general helps. And sometimes that can be hard to do, but even just walking, it helps to breathe. It helps to get some fresh perspective, get some fresh air. I think that's huge. And I also sometimes still struggle with this. It's like, I know that picking up my guitar and practicing and singing will make me feel better. But sometimes I just get so distracted with all the other things that I have to do that I don't do it. And it's like, all I need is 5-10 minutes of singing and playing a song, and it changes my entire mood. So, it's definitely a mind game sometimes, because it's like my mind is like, keep going.
Right.
And it's important to keep going, but it's also important to know when to take breaks and just do things that bring you joy, you know?
And music is powerful. You can make a song that will last forever. You know, it's timeless. It's something that can touch generations. So, not to be too deep in this conversation, but
Hey, let's get right in there.
when you realize that, though, not to say every song is this heavy, deep song, but when you get that concept, like for your legacy, what do you hope that your music can do for people? I know you touched on inspiring them and healing them, but what do you hope that it's all said and done, you look back on your catalog, what does Courtney want to accomplish with that?
I love thinking about this. Honestly, I would love to leave songs that, you know, tell a story, a very real story. You know, I think if I could bring people together with music and just to help them to want to try. I think it's so many times when you're in that dark headspace, it's like you don't want to do anything, you know?
You have to be like, hey, at the end of the day, I have to be the one that does this. You know, no one's going to live my life for me. I have to live my life myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, it's so much easier to not take responsibility and to just keep going, doing the same thing that you've done always because it's comfortable, you know? But there's so much more out there. And it's like, it's scary to think about leaving your comfort zone, but
you're not a stranger to that. You've left many times to new places and met new people.
That's true.
With all this being said, for our listening audience, someone who's uncomfortable with change, right? Uncomfortable with meeting new people or going somewhere different, starting over. Based on what you've been able to accomplish in your life, what would you say to that person who needs that nudge and that motivation to just kind of go for it, stop worrying about it?
Well, one thing I always think about is that change is inevitable. Change is literally the only consistent thing in the whole world. So, you know, whether or not you stay at your job, I don't know, there's underlying forces that change things. Even if you don't change, other things will change around you. You have no control of that. So, you know, it's better to dream up a vision that makes you happy and to take a step in that direction, because things are going to change no matter what. And it's like, do you want them to change in your favor, or do you want them to change and just, you know, be the victim, continue to be the victim? I mean, you know, I'm not sure if that's super encouraging, but I, you know, you can work with change or you can work against it. And once you it's like once you take that step, it's like there's a whole world out there. There's so much more to go and explore and to learn about yourself. And, you know, life is about having challenges, and it's if we step out there and we try, then we at least tried. And if not, it's like nothing is going to change in your favor, you know?
I like what you said about work with change or work against change. I don't want to make it a joke, but I'm going to, because that's where my mind's going right now. But it's almost like someone playing a song off key. You know, sometimes in life, you just got to find that key. I had someone recent on my show who talked about you just got to find what ignites your flame.
Yeah.
Because once you get to that period, that point, everything else is just self-responsibility and self-care. But
Yeah.
when you are in that zone, when you are ignited in that flame, nothing can stop you because it's natural. It's who you are. It's your
Yeah,
very essence of yourself.
absolutely.
What do you say to that when it comes to Courtney's flame? And as far as like the energy that you put out into the world through your music and your creativity.
Mm. I just, I always try to radiate love, honestly. I want people to come together. I want them to be able to connect, to not be afraid. You can choose a kind of, another idiom, if you will. Like you can choose change to work with it or against it. Same thing with like you can choose love or you can choose fear.
Mm.
And
Wow.
yeah, like
Okay, Dr. Phil.
but that's when I'm thinking about promoting a show, it can be really stressful because it's like there's all this pressure to bring people out or to sell tickets or like to cover expenses and that sort of thing. And it's like, okay, I could think about that, or I could think about putting on the best show that I can, have an amazing fun time performing, and bring people together that I actually really love and care about. And I think that is so much more of a pleasant experience than stressing about all the things. It's like if you focus on the positive things, then that'll get you a lot further.
I'm declaring this episode a music therapy episode. I'll be listening to this. I'll be sharing everyone who's in music to be listening to this because this is like therapy right now. And I love what you said because about fear and love. And I'm going to quickly throw it back to your court. But that's powerful because it makes me think whatever situation you're and you face, you can either love your way through it or you can fear yourself through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when storms come in life, you really only got two choices. You keep going or you quit. And quitting is forever.
Yeah.
You can never understand or know what it could have been like. But if you go, at least you can have some funny stories to tell.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that in itself is worth it.
So once again, man, we've been talking to Courtney McKenna. Probably held her too long on this episode, but I had to take as much time because this was a really cool show to unpack today. So once again, you can go to her website, CourtneyMcKenna.rocks. But before we let you go, how can people follow you on social media and what call to action you want them to take?
All right. Well, I've got a new YouTube series coming up, and it's called Indie Artist Survival Showcase. So if you're on YouTube, definitely subscribe to my channel. It's at Courtney McKenna or at Courtney McKenna Music. And I'm mostly on Instagram, other than that, at Courtney McKenna.
I'm going to have you back on the show. That's what I just figured out just now. I'm going to have you back on the show, especially when your series drop. Because I think one thing we can probably do for the next show is kind of tap into the marketing strategy that you do. Because that's a hot topic. A lot of people are trying to stretch the dollar as much as possible. So this might be a timely thing for us to talk about. So man, once again, I want to say thanks to Courtney McKenna for being on the show today and just taking time talking to Army Focus Radio.
Thank you so much for having me. I've definitely enjoyed this conversation.